fuck home!
Now, Samurai Flamenco is an interesting anime that not many people wound up watching, and for those who did watch, sort of dropped early on due to the extreme whiplash in how the series escalates throughout its run. Going into this series completely blind would be one hell of a shocker. However, to properly recommend this series, it is necessary for me to talk about its many changes. However, before getting to that, let's talk about the plot. Masayoshi Hazama is a model who just seems like another pretty face. However, deep down, he has a burning passion for justice, causing him to one day create his very own superhero persona, Samurai Flamenco. With nothing more than just a costume, Masayoshi seeks to face any lawbreaker he comes across, be it delinquent or litterbug. While his intentions are good, Samurai Flamenco does start causing a bit of fuss in town, leading him to meet up with the cop Hidenori Goto, who at first is against Samurai Flamenco, but quickly winds up being a close ally and maybe something more. I mean, nothing really happens between the two, but man does this series push it. After a while, things become smooth sailing for Flamenco as his status spreads and he gets himself a sidekick and mentor. Though literally, out of fucking nowhere, things drastically change as this somewhat down-to-earth show about a guy trying his hardest to become a superhero turns into a legit superhero show in the vein of Kamen Rider. Oh, and if you thought that was crazy, after a couple more episodes, it turns into a fucking Super Sentai series. Then something along the lines of Watchmen, and even Ultraman for a bit, which eventually goes back to a darker storyline that challenges Masayoshi's stance on justice. Crazy stuff, right? And that's just me putting it all in a few simple sentences. Seeing how all this unravels is just one crazy ride. Now, this escalation is one of the major reasons as to why I'm recommending Samurai Flamenco, as I've never experienced a series quite like it. Sure, there are plenty of animes out there that change up the genres over time, but usually the progression makes sense, or they at least give you a little time to breathe. But this series is constantly evolving, keeping you on your toes after each episode, just wondering what direction it's going to take next. Because trust me, when you think you've seen it all, this series proves you wrong. At the same time though, this aspect of the anime makes it hard for me to wholeheartedly recommend, as in the end, this is just a wild superhero clusterfuck. Sure, there are many great ideas present here, but a lot of them are cut short, mainly to move on to the next big crazy thing, or simply just sidelined for something less interesting, like anything having to do with the Flamenco girls. Personally, I think the whole series could have gone without them. Which reminds me, the characters here, while somewhat likable, could have used a lot more development than they wound up getting. Now, it's not like the series didn't try, but the directions they went with it were rather strange. Speaking of strange, my goodness is this series' tone just all over the place. One moment it could be happy-go-lucky, the next it could be very dark and violent, and then go back to being somewhat normal and campy, and then all of a sudden deep and psychological. Especially when you start wondering if a lot of the events throughout this series are just playing out in Masayoshi's head, as everything he's ever dreamed of doing as a superhero literally happens after he becomes Samurai Flamenco. This anime is honestly one of the hardest I've ever recommended, and don't get me wrong, it's not a bad series by any means. And if you're a fan of superheroes or tokusatsu, this is practically a must-watch. And even then, the way this series goes about its business is just worth watching alone just to experience. While Samurai Flamenco has its heart in the right place, the messy structure, tone, and lacking characters really do hold it back from being something amazing. While this anime's studio Manglobe is now gone, this series should not be forgotten about, especially in this day and age of superhero popularity. It may be a clusterfuck, but it's one hell of an experience that you surely will not forget.